Hello,
我是赵
everyone.
黄。
I'm ZHAO Chuang. Today, we will draw the skull of Spiclypeus in a front view. First, we should focus on its overall shape, which resembles an inverted triangle. Next, pay attention to the proportions of its various parts. One key aspect is that its frill and face are nearly equal in length. Therefore, when composing the picture, we can divide it into two equal sections. Additionally, there are complex ornaments along the frill margin. We should pay close attention to their shapes, particularly the two uppermost horns, which curl inward into a somewhat intricate and distorted form. We can use shading to emphasize their details. Now, let's get started. First, use a dotted line to draw a vertical line down the middle of your paper. If you use a pencil to sketch, you can create this line more solidly and erase any extra parts when you finish. Next, draw a U-shaped concave at the uppermost of the frill. Locate the brow horns halfway down this midline. These brow horns should project to the sides like goat horns. We can sketch them now. Then comes its narrow face, in an inverted, narrow triangle shape. At this position, draw its nasal horn and shade it to hint its thickness. Here, at the midline of the frill, is always a bit bumpy, so we draw some curvy lines to show the texture. A pair of horns in the middle will form a large U shape, folding inward to give this area a nearly square appearance. The surface is actually the back of the frill, folding over and facing forward. This curled area may have been formed by 4 fused horns, so we can use a wavy line to draw it. Two large curved horns, resembling cat ears, stand upward on both sides. Then, we outline the overall shape of the frill, which is wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. On the sides are huge marginal horns, getting smaller as they run down. At this position, let's draw the boundary between the parietal and squamosal bones. This dinosaur had huge openings on its frill. We can show the size of these openings. Then, go on and finish these horns. Draw them getting smaller as moving downward. Then, we can go over what we have finished. At this point, extend the central line of the skull downward. Then, move downward to draw its nose. Its nose was extremely narrow, and so was its face. The jugal horns that project to the sides can be observed from this angle, appearing somewhat pointed. Draw the other side in the same way. Then, add the giant nostrils here. Then, softly shade the brow horns to create its roundness and curvature. Moving on to its eye sockets, we can see a bit of them. Then, we can add some light lines to show the depressions on the frill, indicating the complex, superficial texture. Underneath the horns here, we can use darker lines to emphasize the curling. The same goes for the other side. Still, we use shade to indicate the thickness of the horns and the shape of its frill. There is an injury here, we can slightly show it. Draw the shadow area under the curling horns, add some texture on the surface, and depict the feeling of downward curving. Go over the picture with more detail. For example, sketch some shade on the roots of the jugal horns. And add some light lines in the middle of the frill to convey the somewhat rounded and raised appearance. Both sides along the midline should be a bit depressed. Next, let's add the contour to show what it looked like when it was alive. Its beak comes first, which should be much thicker than the fossil. Its face should be with much flesh. From this perspective, the part next to its mouth can be thicker. The cheek can be drawn much fuller because of the masseter. Its jugal horns should be much longer and sharper. Its brow horns also should be much longer than the fossil. Then, let's finish with these horns, which would be much pointed when the dinosaur was alive. The keratin structure is relatively thin, so we can draw the flat part as thin and the horns as sharper. Moving on to the other side, the higher the sharper. We can color the keratinous parts in. Then, color the hollow part black as well. Trace the surrounding edge first, and then fill the color inside. Finally, strengthen the shaded part and color this injury in. In this way, we have finished drawing the skull of Spiclypeus in a front view. Thank you all.